What's going on, everybody? As I was posting up the show right now, I just noticed that the thumbnail is wrong. It didn't update my new thumbnail. I'm bummed. I got to fix that after the show. Remind me, Ryan. I got to fix that after the show. Anyways, hi, it's the new episode 103 of Jon Does. This is 90's Nostalgia. This is the final one for now. This is the end of our season 1 of 90's Nostalgia, and we got a good one today. But before we get there, don't forget to check out wilddinosaur.com. It's the best place to support the channel. I got all kinds of cool stuff there. I got t-shirts, sweatshirts, tote bags, socks, stickers, all kinds of fun stuff. Go check out wilddinosaur.com and support the channel. Anyways, we got not a quick episode. I got a hard out at 7 today, so maybe an extra minute or so, but I can't go terribly long today. So we should get started. Ryan, how you doing?
So far, so good.
So who are we talking about?
We're talking about the Butthole Surfers today.
Who are the Butthole Surfers? I'm curious.
John B., I'd like to read some excerpts from an interview.
Let's go.
With a fella named Mark Kramer.
Ooh, okay.
Mark Kramer is a multi-instrumentalist. He produced a bunch of bands I like. Bongwater, King Missile, Naked City, Boredoms,
ooh, yeah,
Ween, Low, Galaxy 500. There are more. As I said, these are excerpts. This was just a great interview he gave a couple of years back. It's lengthy. This is the third part of the interview. And it starts, the best years of my life happened over the course of about 6 months in 1985 while I was on the road with Paul Leary, Gibby Haynes, King Coffey, and Teresa Taylor, collectively known as the Butthole Surfers. He goes on a bit. He's describing a tour in Norway. He says, I rushed to the dressing room and find Paul smashing his vintage Fender Telecaster against the ground. He then gets down on his knees and starts beating it with his right fist. Blood begins to spurt forth. Gibby watches silently, with no expression at all on his face. A small crowd is gathering at the dressing room door. Smellin, sound guy, who seems to have perked up a bit following the show, pushes his way in and walks right up to Paul. He leans down and says, I love your music. I have all your LPs. Paul tells him to get the hell out of there. Same tour, different city. I hear Paul screaming my name. I follow the sound of the dressing room. Kramer. And I apologize for the language. Kramer, where's the fecking acid? What? How the feck should I know where the acid is? Ask Gibby. Combination of deep sorrow and infinite wrath sweeps across his face. Why should I ask Gibby? Listen, I said, I've got nothing to do with this. Talk to Gibby. Did Gibby eat all the acid, that fecking asshole? I hate this stupid fecking band. I told you I hate this stupid fecking band, and I fecking meant it. Well, I fecking quit. He charges out the dressing room, comes face to face with Gibby. Did you eat all the acid, you dumb feck? I hate you. Gibby ignores him at first, but then has a better idea. He puts his nose a few inches from Paul's face. And oh, so quietly he begins to sing in almost a whisper. I see a little silhouette of a man. Paul's face turns. He turns and rushes back into the dressing room as Gibby gives chase, taunting him. Thunderbolt and lightning, very, very frightening. Paul slams the door shut before Gibby can get in. He concludes, he goes on. There are some great passages describing life on the road with the Butthole Surfers in Europe. He concludes this interview, beneath the stage horror hysterics and respective psychopathologies of each and every step we took together as a band, beneath all of that, just beneath it, were the souls of some of the finest people I've ever known. These were good people, with hearts of solid gold and a sense of friendship and camaraderie and love and right and wrong that would put the knights of the Round Table to shame. You didn't have to dig deep to unbury the good in them. They were dipped in it at birth. It was right on the surface. You just had to be unafraid to look closely. But to do that, you had to get close. I will love these people long after I am dead. And of that death, thanks in great part to my months alongside them in 1985, I will not be afraid. A snapshot of the Butthole Surfers and who they are.
And what was that? What was that from?
From an interview with Mark Kramer.
All right. That was, I think, a vivid depiction of the type of band we're dealing with today.
I felt compelled to grab that. Is this another one of those bands your brother and sister introduced you to?
No, actually, I don't think my siblings were fans at all. However, when I was younger, they were in the middle of their shouldn't just say them. A lot of people their age were in the middle of MTV. You know, there. For people who are unaware, MTV Music Television actually used to run music basically all day until they became like a reality show network. And they had various segments. There was I sometimes I mix these up because of VH1, because I watched both. I grew up watching VH1 and MTV. There was it Headbangers Ball on MTV?
Yeah,
I think that's where it was. I don't remember either one of my siblings necessarily pointing out the Butthole Surfers, but I do very much remember the video for Pepper. For me, I guess that was really the intro to it. I remember seeing the video, and you know, it's got that feel to it. It's like it's a kind of chaotic video, but it also feels like a newscast from like the 60s to a degree. And it's all like shot at this hotel in Texas, and there's all this stuff going on and whatnot. And I remember just really being like, this aesthetic's kind of cool. I didn't know that word at the time. And so I think the video for Pepper was really the only real introduction I had to the Butthole Surfers at the time. I wasn't really, I didn't hear about them more in depth until a little bit later, maybe my college years. I had a friend named Carson that I remember talking about this album.
I remember Carson.
Yeah, you met Carson. Carson and I remember talking about Electriclarryland on a number of occasions. But I do have one thing to admit about this is I hadn't listened to the whole record until this week, which was kind of shocking to me because, well, we can get into this over the course of this episode, but I'm just going to go out and say it real quick. This might be my favorite record we've done in all 8 of these episodes.
That's saying something.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of things in there that I don't like. Not like I dislike the music. There's some stuff to me that at this point in time, there's a couple of songs that just feel a little mid, or what's another good term for this? Maybe slightly generic rock of the time, but that's also because of the hindsight we have. You know, we have 2 decades past us before, with a lot of other like bland radio rock. But I'm not going to say that the whole record sounds like that. It's maybe like 1 or 2 things, really. But yeah, for the most part, I really like this record. And there's some things that are a little uncomfortable about the record for me, but even the uncomfortable parts of it's still good. The things that make me uncomfortable about this record are mostly like lyrics.
Sure.
And
well,
yeah.
What about the cover, man?
I like the cover. I've seen that cover for like 20 years now. It doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't bother me. It just looks like another, I don't know how to say this. It kind of seems like mid 2000s digital art, even though it's not. I mean, it kind of is, but it isn't. I'm not doing a good job explaining my thoughts on the album cover, but
it's not particularly inspiring.
No, it's not, but it's also
execution.
But it's also intriguing. Did you ever watch Animation Show? They were a couple of volumes. They might have done more. I remember watching the first 2. There's like 2 volumes of animation that was collected from around the world. This was in the early 2000s, I think. Maybe like 2004 or 5, maybe. And it was a collection of Mike Judge and what's his name? Hirschfelder? I can't remember his first name. They collected all these animations from around the world, and they combined them into like a volume. So you can go pick this thing up. It's really great, actually. If you haven't seen it, Ryan, I recommend it to you, particularly because I know what you're up to these days. And
sure.
it's animation shorts in all kinds of format. There's stop motion, there's digital art. And then one of the things that I always remembered that stuck out to me was Mike Judge put in a bunch of pencil tests. So it's just like busts of characters or, things that he didn't totally finish, but they were animated to a degree. And that's kind of what this reminds me of, is pseudo Mike Judge art to it. I mean, it definitely is a little bit different, but that's what this album cover reminds me of, is some of the art. I guess Mike Judge is a good example, but the Animation Show has some specific moments, I think, that remind me of this. There's a specific character who is talking about paprika and swatting a fly away with his ear. I don't know. It's just quirky little weird things that I think are great. That this cover reminds me of is that kind of style of animation. But yeah, the things about this record that like I said, that are a little uncomfortable for me are mostly lyrics. But again, it is. I know what band we're getting into here. We're talking about about the Butthole Surfers. We're talking about a band called the Butthole Surfers.
Have you got the album art to Electriclarryland up there?
I do. Yes.
On screen.
Yes.
Right on.
Yes.
So, I would. Every Butthole Surfers album cover is pretty uncomfortable.
Uh-huh.
They, I think, do a service to the unaware buyer by, adorning their music with unsettling artwork. If not downright repulsive.
Well, they definitely telegraph their personalities through their visual aesthetic.
I've heard Gibby Haynes go off once or twice about the idea that a good rock band ought to be shocking somehow.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, the idea that you need to put a little something in there, just a little evil, goes a long way. I think there's lots to make plenty of people uncomfortable on this record and their entire discography, for that matter. No denying. There were, I remember that summer I was working at the record shop back home, and Pepper dropped on the airwaves, and we got our shipment of. So I was aware of the Butthole Surfers before Electriclarryland. I thought, first of all, we only got like 3 copies of Electriclarryland in when it came out. More followed, but that initial week, yeah, we only got 3. And I was looking for other Butthole Surfers records. We might have had Independent Worm Saloon. That was one I saw around plenty among Michigan retailers. For the most part, their earlier stuff was kind of hard to find. I think the first Butthole Surfers I heard was, it would have been Independent Worm Saloon. And that one was always kind of jumping out at you because it's just such a scary cover. To me, it's a scary cover. Some kind of hookworm, I think. One parasite or another. Kind of a close-up shot.
Sorry about that. I realized I had a monitor on. Sorry for that pop if you heard that.
Gradually after that, I'd encounter somebody with a Butthole Surfers tape or CD that I hadn't heard before. So maybe I was familiar with about, I don't know, half of their back catalog when Electriclarryland came out. Mm-hmm. Pepper struck me as, I didn't think they were selling out. I thought they were cashing in.
Yeah.
I thought it was, they had a couple videos from Independent Worm Saloon that were getting rotation on MTV. Or at least one. I know I saw who was in my room last night, which is a very distinct visual style to it. We could say that throughout the rest of the 90s, I would catch whatever Butthole Surfers record, I could. Mm-hmm. But I probably got done listening to all of the Butthole Surfers I could find somewhere after a couple years in Taiwan, probably. A lot of the record shops there had UK pressings of that stuff. Somehow, still.
It is funny.
So it was easy to...
Sorry. Yeah. I was just going to comment real quick. It's funny to hear that you only got 3 copies of the record at the record shop.
Yeah.
Because it was a big label, so.
Well, and that went gold.
Yeah.
That went gold. I saw them that July at the, it was called Phoenix Plaza back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
But it was it was this giant parking garage in downtown Pontiac. It was just like within walking distance from where I was born. There was this big parking lot, took up blocks, and on top they built a sort of amphitheater. And for a while we caught a bunch of cool shows there. And the street, I believe it was Saginaw, running, right into it. It was just, you have to understand Pontiac's been hit hard by Michigan's economic downturn, going back to probably the turn of the century. At this time, Pontiac had a bustling downtown, and you'd look at it and think it was just, any town USA. But for Pontiac, that was really special, and it seemed to be on the mend. And maybe it was a half an hour drive from my folks' place. It was close, much closer than Detroit. Much closer than Detroit. Closer than anywhere else that was worth going, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
And by and large, we were kind of country kids, but we had this little city to go to. And, pretend to sort of live our lives out in the city for a night. That particular night, I believe the expression is, had my face melted, ass kicked, triple bill, Toadies opened up.
Ooh.
Yeah, they had a record called Rubberneck Out.
Mm-hmm.
The song was Possum Kingdom, I believe. Kind of a blues. Part of it had a boogie-like section. Good song. They were from Texas. Then came the Reverend Horton Heat, also from Texas. Gibby Haynes produced, in my opinion, the best Reverend Horton Heat album. Full custom gospel sounds of Reverend Horton Heat. Toadies go up, Reverend goes up. They're killing it. It's insane. I'd seen some rock concerts by that point. I dare say I'd seen some legends by that point. These guys were on fire. And then the Butthole Surfers come on. And Gibby Haynes has this podium with all kinds of effects. Maybe an oscillator or two. Maybe a keyboard. I say a podium, but it was the size of a small refrigerator. You could see his head over it. He had a bullhorn, 3 different mics maybe, a bouquet of mics.
It must have been Valentine's Day.
The time Mark Kramer was referring to was a time when the Butthole Surfers had double drummers live.
Oh, okay. Was one of them was it the original drummer, Tessa? Is that her name? Teresa
was the second drummer.
Oh, okay.
King Coffey, I think, has been there from the very beginning. Yeah, she's a really sweet girl. She had to leave the band. I think all of this is public record, but there were some health concerns.
Okay.
And she got into special education for a while. She'd do the occasional show. She did a reunion tour with them. And, members of the band speak really highly of her. And, so does former members of the band, like Mr. Kramer. Not to go too far into that, but this time around, I listened to Electriclarryland, and I liked it a little better. But I like it more than I did. I had never gone back to re-listen to Electriclarryland. I didn't think much of it at the time. What I found that was on YouTube, just a huge amount of Butthole Surfer shows from the 80s with both drummers and, gosh, some of it, I think some of it might be Kramer, but Jeff Plinkus is on bass. Jeff Plinkus joined after Mark Kramer left. Mark Kramer left because he got that studio he wanted, and he started making all of those awesome records that I loved so much. His record label's called Shimmy Disc.
Okay.
And that would have been the first record label that I ever really fell in love with, by way of King Missile. And then Ween, Naked City, again, just a lot of people I like were on that label, under the influence, I think, of Mark Kramer. But I think a lot of these bands that I just treasure were influenced tremendously by the Butthole Surfers. And so, yeah, them with Wayne Kramer's kind of a super group, and just seeing them, the footage on YouTube is very good, by the way. Seeing them at that stage in their career, mid-'80s, Butthole Surfers, is really something to see. At least on YouTube, at least on YouTube. I read reminiscences of people who were there, and you talk about a record making you feel uncomfortable. These shows could make you feel uncomfortable.
Oh, I'm sure. That's something. I mean, when I say there's something uncomfortable about it, it's not a bad thing.
No, it's not.
Yeah, sometimes being uncomfortable. I mean, the initial feeling of being uncomfortable is like not understanding what you're doing or what you're into, or whatever. But something like feeling uncomfortable with music, it's always like a learning experience, because it's, what is it, lyrics, are there odd tones, but the shows too, that's the other thing. And I do feel like there's a little bit more, there's a reminiscent aspect, but completely different from like G.G. Allen or something like that with the Butthole Surfers. Less like bloody and more just like off the wall zany in like a psychotic way.
Fire,
in an
dancing people.
Yeah, in an acid inducing way. Not like a let's shit on the stage and cut our chest open or anything like that. But yeah.
No, they didn't get quite. When I saw them, they didn't need any shenanigans to blow me away, at least.
Yeah.
And I did not necessarily like every minute of it. Some of it I felt was punishing. And I accepted that. I guess they toughened me up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, after my time spent with them, like Kramer, I was not afraid of anything that a record could do to me. And John B., you're such a gentle soul. You're a kind, loving, tender-hearted man. But what the Butthole Surfers drag you through on some of their records, I don't know that you need to hear that, but I did, And when I say it's disgusting, it's without getting too into it, it's a very, very convincing looped sample of someone vomiting repeatedly, with someone else telling them to clean it up, and then another voice telling them to come out with their hands up. And the riff is just heavy, and the music is brutal. And I've heard that song some nights and just didn't need to. Needed to shut it off. That's at the end of Independent Worm Saloon.
Okay.
Produced by John Paul Jones.
Yes.
Former bassist Led Zeppelin. Google him. Good stuff.
Yes.
John Paul Jones.
If you're not familiar with John Paul Jones, what are you doing?
He's associated with some quality music.
Yeah.
There's this other song at the end of Abortion Locust Abortion Technician. That's the best album in my opinion. The ending song it's called 22 Going on 23. I don't know if it's a found recording or if they're faking it or I don't know, man. It's a caller. Somebody's calling somebody else. Some kind of call-in show, maybe. Could be a therapist. It's a lady who's endured some trauma and she's just having a hard time dealing with it. And her life isn't really coming together the way she wants it to. And she's reaching out for help. And it's heartbreaking. And the music is appropriate, you know. And as much as they can gross you out, they can just really make you, they can almost bring a tear to your eye. Well, where they go emotionally, you know.
There is one thing I do want to say about them musically is we've talked about, you know, the drug use and the craziness that this band is, but listening to this record, they 100% encompass what I would perceive as what you would call a Texas band, because they're hard rock, they're fast stuff. It feels like Texas, just like good old boy. They're not necessarily good old boys, but it kind of feels like that, where they're just like drunk, playing, having a good time. But then you have some other tracks here. Oh man, what was it? TV Star? This is like a straight country song, and
with a twist.
With a twist, yeah, for sure. They've got their Butthole Surfers thing in there, but you know, you and I have had conversations about like, artistically about it's important to know the rules so you can break them. You know, a lot of people go into like playing music or making art or of things being like, I'm just going to break the rules. Well, you do have to know the rules to break the rules, and this Butthole Surfers totally feels like a band that is like, if they really wanted to, and maybe they have, I just haven't listened to their whole discography, they could do a straight like Texas country-ish Lone Star type country song or record. They totally could do that if they wanted to. That's not in, it doesn't seem like that's in their personalities so much to do something like that, but it is enough of who they are that like, yeah, it's expected to put a song like that on a record like that has Jingle of the Dog's Collar or My Brother's Wife. That's the one that I was more a little uncomfortable with, but that's just my own place in life.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that spoken word stuff going through their catalog. I mean, it took me a little while I was on the fence about them as to whether they were serious or not.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, maybe Locust Abortion Technician is my favorite because it was the one where I decided they weren't joking around here.
Yeah.
They try to explore like Ween after them, they try to explore as much emotional territory as they possibly can. And in most projects I associate with Kramer, that same thing is going on. There's an openness to experimenting with different genres. I mean, TV Star is, I can't remember if there's another country tune on here.
There might be.
Or not.
There might be.
There's a lot of jangly guitar.
Yes, yeah. For sure.
There's some super solid, just funk comping, I guess. I mean, see, I wonder if they wanted to call the record Electriclarryland, and Paul Leary was just like, no. I thought this record was boring at the time. Generally, I don't like it when Butthole Surfers do punk songs.
Yeah.
And that comes up a lot in their discography. So, like, you're saying this is a less than perfect album to you. Well, they're a perfect Butthole Surfers record for me doesn't exist. On every Butthole Surfers record, I need to bite it for a song or two.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mind it because I know they're never really wasting my time.
Yeah.
But all the same, and to be perfectly clear, I mean, I would like to distinguish. I mean, when I say they do a punk song, they've got a certain type of song they do that, to me, kind of resembles the Dead Kennedys, your typical Dead Kennedys song.
Sure.
I don't care for those so much.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, you got something. Okay, Ulcer Breakout is a dedicated rocker, which might display some similarities to a Dead Kennedys tune, but is just punches its way past it and into my heart. I think the Lord is a Monkey's pretty good. It's like a Jimi Hendrix exercise.
Yeah.
I think the way they come in together, I'm pretty sure they did The Lord is a Monkey live, where Gibby Haynes spits the verse and then the band comes in super loud. That's that song. It's good. That one would have stood out early on. I felt like he had earned the right to rap, sort of, by that point. The band felt so free, doing everything else. It just stands to reason they would mimic that or channel that.
So, this not being your favorite, Butthole Surfers record, and now that you've gone back, it sounds like you do have a little bit more of a positive outlook on it than you might have.
A newfound respect for it.
Sure. I mean, clearly you didn't have any standout tracks for me. Pepper has always been that for me. I still love Pepper. I think it is still my favorite song from this record. However, there's at least 3 other songs on here that I'm like, these are really good songs that I would, throw onto playlists or, listen outside of the record. But where do you stand with any of these individual songs? And while you're at it, throw in your take on some of the mix.
On a re-listen, this is Paul Leary's shining moment in a way, and I wish it were better. He's got some basses. He's got Andrew Weiss dropping in on bass, who was probably just freshly kicked out of Ween at that point. You know, so that's kind of cool. But really, what was going on, I think, was he was doing basic tracking in his home, and a lot of these are Paul Leary compositions, and that's real. As a guitarist, I appreciate that. I know he played some bass on this record. He had a lot to do with, yeah, man, basic tracking was done in his home. That's cool. I'm into that. I think his soloing, oh my God, dude, he's on fire. The solo to Pepper is a great solo.
Yeah.
The solo to Pepper is a great solo. There's no overplaying there. It doesn't get boring. And his guitar work throughout is just great. Just great. Electriclarryland is, you know, a Jimi Hendrix reference, an oblique Jimi Hendrix reference.
Yeah.
There are Jimi Hendrix references throughout there. They've got a killer song named Jimmy, for Pete's sake. Paul Leary can rip it up. Paul Leary can rip it up. And this is optimized. This record is optimized. Every minute of this record, and it's too long, but they're either repeating themselves or padding the songs unnecessarily. The record is too long. Still, every second is optimized to get Leary's guitar out there.
Yeah.
Drums are all... King Coffey is such a good drummer. Butthole Surfers, better when they have two drummers, but they've always got at least one killer drummer.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got good beats. And those are always present. That will carry you through 80% of their music. None of it's never going to get louder than those drums. I don't think Gibby Haynes is at his best on this record. I think he's got his moments, but I know the guy can sing really well. The guy can sing really well, and he's got his moments on. TV Star's a good example. But on other records, I mean, in earnest, you know, he sings full throat, and it works. I think John Paul Jones might have coaxed a better performance out of him than some of their other home recordings, but you get the idea. The guy's going into the ring with one hand tied behind his back.
John Paul Jones wasn't a part of this one, was he? I don't see. Okay,
no.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
This is kind of a stripped down Surfers.
Just the three of them, mostly. With some help here and there, I'm assuming.
I listened to a bunch of old live shows, and I listened and read some interviews with these guys. And Paul Leary's a badass and a sweetheart to boot.
I mean, yeah, he's worked with quite a lot of people. Daniel Johnson.
Yeah, he has.
The Meat Puppets.
Mm-hmm.
Slightly stupid. Oh, man.
I get the impression that it kind of goes like this. Locust Abortion Technician was recorded in a house in Georgia. And they got some gear, and they cranked that out There was a lot of experimenting going on, and they had plenty of time to take lots of drugs. Afterwards, I think they got signed, and shortly thereafter they got signed. There might have been an EP or two in there, and maybe some kind of retrospective or live joint. And then came a period where it became less about experimenting in the studio and going into the studio with preformed ideas. And a lot of Butthole Surfers records after that point are very kind of song-based and tuneful, perhaps. I mean, not that that was missing before, but there was a greater... They were really applying themselves, all of them. And that went for Gibby Haynes. And he was pushing himself as a vocalist. I don't hear that on Electriclarryland. And I didn't hear that on Electriclarryland. It's not great, but it gets worse. You know, they've since stopped making records. But yeah, what followed Electriclarryland is not worthy of our, however few moments, whatever, our precious time, man. Not worth our precious time.
Well, speaking of time, we only have about 10 minutes left. Because I do have to cut this a little shorter today than normal. So let's talk about the last couple of things we usually talk about. Recommendation. Oh, first of all, songs that are standouts to us on this record, and other Butthole Surfer album recommendations. So in regards to like songs that stuck out to you this time around, I'm interested to know like what songs did stick out to you on this one.
My Brother's Wife sounds like a Butthole Surfers song.
Yeah,
like it belongs on a Butthole Surfers record. I kind of think the last third of the thing is pretty solid, actually. I mean, probably. If not the last half, I mean, depending on how you.
I'll be honest. I
think this is as good as you can get with the Butthole Surfers when it comes to meeting somebody like halfway. Okay. This is an uncompromising band. This is an uncompromising band, and this is about as close as they're ever going to get to meeting a listener and not demanding too much of them. You know, they're going to take in it. They're going to take something anyway, but not too much.
I agree with you on that. I still think Pepper is, like, again, my favorite. But this record, the last half, for me, starting with the Jingle of the Dog's Collar, I really like that one. And it progressively...
And there's an example of him singing well.
Yes. And it kind of does this weird progression thing for me with, like, Pepper is their pop track from this. Essentially, it became that.
Yeah.
And then from Jingle of a Dog's Collar to My Brother's Wife to Space, the final track, there's like a weird, interesting, kind of weird progression if you listen to those three tracks together. They're split up by other tracks, of course, but yeah, I really found the last half of this album really solid. Again, I might have mentioned this at the beginning. This is, I think, my favorite record that we've covered so far on our 90s nostalgia episodes, and one of the reasons is I think it's the best mixed. I really do. Not to say that other records haven't been mixed well. For example,
this is the guitariest record we've listened to.
That's true. And kind of going back to that specific point is when we talked about Bush a handful of weeks ago. That's a well-produced record, and the guitars are very present and everything, but it does feel like a studio guitar setup. However you want to describe how the recording process of those guitars was. This feels like a band playing, but it feels like the best version of a band playing on record. The Butthole Surfers. That's the comparison I will give to the context of 90s nostalgia episodes that we watched. Bush has a lot of guitar in it, but it felt kind of stale and very not stale, but sterile, I guess. A little bit. You know, it felt
part of that is the recording, and it was fashionable. But I mean, Paul Leary had been playing guitar for quite a while.
Oh yeah. You can tell
probably over 15 years, I think, at that point.
You can tell that there is love and knowledge that went into the production of this. And not like hey, we're going to, this is going to come out on Capitol Records, so we need to go to Abbey Road Studio or anything like that. Like, this to me sounds like almost, I want to watch my words here, but I'll just be a little willy-nilly here. It feels like a perfectly mixed rock record. For me, there's a lot of, there's talking about the kinds of songs in this that goes from like a pop song to like something more heavy and abrasive and stuff like that. So the movement of the record and the way it flows together really works for me. And I mean, you and I are always passing music back and forth of like our own music and stuff like that. One of my favorite things to hear, I always expect it every time, is when I send you something, it's like, even if the guitars are the whole song, you're still like, turn those guitars up. I love it. I love hearing that. And that's the kind of thing that I hear now. When I hear you say that in my head, this is the record that's going to come to mind of like where things should be. Kind of. I mean, there's a lot of things you could look to, but yeah.
It's yeah.
Well, let's wrap this up. Sorry, what was your recommendation for other Butthole Surfers?
Work backwards. I mean, this is the thing. We've had a similar discussion about Ween.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is part of what I didn't like as much about Bush when I first heard them, or even Space Hog, really. I mean, a lot of these bands that I loved back then, you got to listen to them at various stages in their development.
Yeah.
And Independent Worm Saloon probably would have been peak production for them.
Okay.
But this is close on the heels, if not equal to. I mean, past a certain point, I suppose it doesn't matter. But going back to like Hairway to Steven, for instance, Jimmy. I'm listening to Jimmy the first time, and I'm with Ryan. We're in his 86 Dodge Shadow. And I'm listening to this, and I turn to him and I'm like, did you guys record this? I mean, it would have sounded like it had been, done on a Tascam, 4-track.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't. I mean, the speakers to that car weren't great. It was a dubbed tape.
Sure.
Yakety schmackety. But it was clear, the more Butthole Surfers that I heard, they had different sounds, man, depending on their time. And you really got to hear them develop as a band in terms of their chops and in terms of, the places that would allow them to come in and record, you know?
All right.
Well, and that's just part of loving, not necessarily music, but loving a band to me is having a story to follow and ups and downs to sort of chart out. And that's what makes, for me, that's what makes picking up new music so difficult now. You know?
Mm-hmm.
That development isn't necessarily happening.
Well, there is all the old stuff. So go back and listen to all the old stuff.
Fair enough. I mean, I want to be clear. You've introduced me to plenty of bands that do precisely that. I think Tame Impala, Death Grips, and King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard and they've been, obviously, those guys have been making music for a good long while now and have hefty discographies. Yeah, and you can go through them and sort of chart a sort of development, a sort of, there's a narrative there to be read, a history.
Yeah.
It's tough to find that. It's always been tough to find that. And now it's harder still.
Well, hopefully people are watching our episodes because maybe we can give them a little something. And this is the last episode for now of 90s Nostalgia. We're gonna take some time and regroup and whatnot, and hopefully come back with season 2 sometime. And maybe we can get some people interested in other stuff going backwards that they hadn't heard before. But it's about 7:00, and
it's about that time.
I do have to run. Ryan, I'm sorry. This is
congratulations on a hard hour.
Yeah, thanks. I actually do wish we had a little bit more time to talk about this, because I think the Butthole Surfers are an interesting band, and anyways, I think people should check out more of their stuff. I'm going to check out more of their stuff that I haven't, because I have failed in this lifetime by not listening to it.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot
going on.
There is a lot going on, and you'll hear more about that here on Jon Does. But Ryan, thanks for joining me. This isn't the end of Ryan on Jon Does. He might pop up on Friday episodes, or here or there, when he has an opportunity to. So until we do a season 2 of our 90s.
That is. All right, man.
Yeah, I appreciate your help with all this stuff, and the listeners enjoyed hearing you talk about these bands too. So thanks again, Ryan, for being here. Is this the right one?
Always a pleasure, man.
There we go. Some applause for you. There you are.
So nice to hear.
All right, Ryan. We'll talk to you later.
Mm-hmm. Good night, man.
Good night. All right, that was Ryan. This is 90s Nostalgia. This is Jon Does, episode 103. As I posted this episode, there was an issue with the thumbnail, so I did fix that, but the link still has the old thumbnail when you... I'll try to figure it out. Anyways, I got to get going. I hope you guys have a good Thursday. I'll be back on Friday. I don't know if Pat will be here, but we'll see. It's just going to be a fun episode. And, I hope you guys have a good evening and Thursday, and I will see you on Friday. Don't forget to check out wilddinosaur.com. It's the best place to support the channel. And also, there's a link in the description to donate to Planned Parenthood, because they are badass. So you should consider donating to them. All right, guys, have a good night. See you later.